Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond, in London, England, as well as Paris, France, and of course you good old boys from Canada. You know we love you up in Canada, and we love them in Africa, called the Big C Drop. Don't know, we didn't forget about you good old boys, but Big C, there's no one we love more than you good old boys down south. In the land of the free, in the home of the brave, Big C, how's it going for you good old boys down south?
Well, Charlton, we're having a happy holiday down here. Today is the kickoff of Major League Baseball, America's pastime. So it's an excuse every day to drink beer.
Hold on, Big C. Are you backsliding, Big C? You know the South is full of religious people, the religious hypocrites that we call them. I thought you guys only engaged in the moonshine, Big C. You saying beer's moved into the house now, Big C?
Well, I didn't say at the house, but, we can sneak into a ballpark, They have that liquid gold there and stuff because it's hard to get moonshine at the concession stand.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't come out the tap.
Yeah, they don't want to tap it out too much. I do want to say today's segment is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you on a beautiful opening day for Major League Baseball, March 29th, 2018, Big C, in the land of the free, in the home of the brave. I want to give a special shout out to my Instagram follower at Town Today by Adrian Pinion. Follows the MMA with Big C Sports. So thank you, Adrian, for doing that. Also, Big C, a lot of things happening. You know, we love baseball. I just remember it was last year that you good old boys from down south came out to the West Coast, and you were not very grateful to the LA Dodgers. I mean, Vin Scully was there, Magic Johnson showed up. We had all the Hollywood stars ready to see a Game 7 won by them good old boys from LA. What happened, and why is Houston still considered the #1 Major League sports team in the universe? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, they retained so many of their players off their World Series team.
Yeah.
And they had such a young, bustling lineup. And, they made some late-season moves, accusations, that made that lineup even stronger.
Yeah.
And so, as long as people stay healthy in Houston, and when you have a young team like they do, you don't have a lot of egos.
Yeah.
You're not riding on the coattail of one player or two players.
Yeah.
As we saw in the World Series last year, there was a different start every night.
Yeah.
And so that's hard to put your hands on when you're playing against an organization like that. It's like, who do you concentrate on?
Yeah.
Because everybody hit home runs. You have a tremendous pitching staff that is 4.5 starters deep.
Yep.
And so we saw that, the pitching paralysis that they had. And they also made some moves in the offseason that even strengthened the ball team, Charles.
Well, when you talk about their pitching, and we'll go over a lot of the salaries today, too, because, we always talk about how can a team go from last to first. And, I mean, this team was put together with the thought that they would actually win the World Series back then in 2018. I thought Justin Verlander, and he's their starting pitcher, $28 million a year. That's how much moonshine could he buy with $28 million salary, Big C? He could buy a lot of moonshine, but he's known for throwing heat, and he's really untouchable. And I think seeing that against the Dodgers, that really showed us how good he was, that they built that team to win. I know people talk about what they don't like about baseball. And sometimes baseball is built for certain teams to continually win, like the New York Yankees, which have always been a winner. But I look at what they've done down in Houston. Not only did they have a lot of young Latin players, Big C, they brought in a veteran player who had the experience, and like you said, no egos. What has Verlander, with all of his experience, meant adding him to that staff, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, what you had, you spoke about it first and foremost, being an experienced pitcher, Charles.
Yeah.
A guy who had been on the cusp of the World Series before when he was in Detroit. But when you trade away all the integral parts of an organization, then you're left as one of the lone superstars left there.
Yeah.
He came to Houston, he was humble.
Yeah.
he had an opportunity to get back to the World Series. And as you get latter part of your career, you don't want to let these opportunities get away from you.
Yeah.
And so he was rejuvenated when he went to Houston. He said, I don't want to be the kink in the chain.
Yeah.
I want to be one of that smooth flows. And you saw him every game that he pitched. He was untouchable. He was undefeated.
Yeah.
And so that's what he did. He brought some newfound leadership to the bullpen.
Yep.
Let guys know that every pitch counted. And you saw the tenacity and the willingness to lead.
Yeah.
That's what happens a lot of times, Charlton, when you go out and make a trade and you have a veteran lineup.
Yeah.
Is that you bring somebody in who is not willing to lead, who just wants to be a part of the fold.
Yeah.
And he didn't do that. He just said, guys, I'm here. I'm a hired gun.
Yep.
I don't know if I'll be here next year, but I'm going to use all the arsenal that I have to help you get to a championship this year.
Yeah.
And that's what he did. And you think about, you had an MVP in Altuve.
Yeah.
You had a great infield, great outfield. It was hard to find a weakness.
Yeah.
In that lineup.
Yeah, and even today in their season opening win over the Texas Rangers, a 4-1 win. You think about it, George Springer hit an opposite field home run in his first at-bat of the season for the defending champions. Now, these good old boys, I recall last year when they came into Los Angeles, and the people in California have to learn, when people come in from the South, they're not bringing that Southern hospitality. They brought some Southern hostility, Big C. And this team is starting the way they finished last year. I think about George Springer. He's an outfielder, $12 million a year. I mean, he makes less than half of what Verlander's making, but he hit a home run to start it off. And when you think about the moxie of those young players, and a lot of them Latin, they think they can do it again. And of course, who doesn't say that? Everybody says that. But I know what you have in Houston, that they have right now. I mean, they're a hot city. You think about Watson, the quarterback for Texas, and then how the Rockets are playing right now. We know they have a lot of expectations for the Astros. A lot of people think that they may just be the best team. So we wish them nothing but the best until they play someone from California. I want to look at, out here on the West Coast, the Dodgers and the Giants, they're playing tonight. Chavez Ravine. You know that rivalry. Both of them good old boys came over from New York back in the day, the Dodgers and the Giants. And you think about Kershaw at 30 years old. He's had a decade of dominance. And now he's at home again, where they have to have some bad feelings, Big C, from last year. Who would have wished for a Game 7 in your own stadium with one of the most storied franchises in baseball, and they got beat basically in the first 2 innings last year in Game 7 against Houston? How can they bounce back tonight against the Giants, Big C, in division rival? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, the rivalry that they have against the Giants, I believe it's called the I-5 rivalry.
Yeah.
That, these two teams from their days in New York have always been rivals. And they've been the stellars of the West Coast.
Yeah.
They've been the dominant franchises. And, that Northern California, Southern California rivalry. But, last year was last year with the Dodgers.
Yeah.
They were very fortunate, and it had been almost 30 years since they won a World Series.
Yeah.
So, to get to that point, it's always going to be a loser.
Yeah.
It's just, it was Houston's time, last year, and they were hot at the right time. And that's what all sports come down to.
Yeah.
Being hot at the right time. And you go out there and you're playing fearless. The thing about professional sports is that you always have to play to win.
Yeah.
You can't go out and play not to lose.
Yeah.
Because what that does, it always puts you behind the 8 ball.
Yeah.
Is that, I think the Dodgers last year may have counted a little bit too much on that 7th game moxie of being at home.
Yu Darvish,
you would have the crowd behind you.
Yeah.
But we saw throughout the whole series that Yu Darvish was touchable every time he walked out on the mound.
Yeah, guys on TV knew what he was going to throw. How come, if guys on TV knew what Darvish was throwing last year, why did they stick with him past the first out? I mean, it just seems like that's part of the game of baseball. It's about performance. It's about guys pitching and guys hitting, and that's what counts. But when I look at Kershaw and I look at his counterpart in what you have in Verlander, Kershaw also makes $34 million a year. So what does $34 million buy you in Los Angeles, Big C? It hasn't bought a World Series yet. I know he's only 30. I know they've had, Yasiel Puig makes $9 million a year, and he's arguably the most dominant player for the Dodgers. But again, being a player that's a Latin player, and they're going to get him cheap. We talk about the exodus of the African-American athlete in Major League Baseball. A lot of players in Latin America, they play this sport year-round, and you can get them cheap. How does a guy like Yasiel Puig, who's like the modern-day Barry Bonds, only make $9 million a year for a team that's in Tinseltown, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, you got to understand, he's been in the major leagues less than 5 years. He hasn't gotten to the point of free agency and arbitration yet.
Yeah.
So he's still playing on that rookie contract. And you think about Yasiel, $9 million.
That's it.
And he came from Cuba.
Yeah.
You know, that's like $90 million. Okay?
Okay. Don't tell him that, Big Z. He might sit out the next game.
He had to make an exodus out of that country.
Yeah.
And file for asylum and citizenship.
Yeah.
And so he was able to get that in the U.S.
Yeah.
So when you think about where he is now, a young man who grew up and lived in oppression in Cuba,
Yeah.
who was not allowed the freedom to speak or even do the things that he wanted to do,
Yeah.
other than play baseball.
Yeah.
$9 million is not a bad living for him. Now, you got to look, if he continues at the level that he's going, that next contract will be worth $150 to $180 million.
Oh, yeah, and I'm sure he'll take all that. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, he'll get that type of money by staying healthy, Charles.
Yeah.
You know, he's one of those young, bustling, up-and-coming stars in the major leagues. I mean, when you look at Yasiel, it's like looking at the kid in New York.
Yeah.
You know, here it is, Judge is playing for peanuts. Also, when you look at what Giancarlo Stanton is being paid in the trade from Miami, you know, to come up to New York. You know, he had a $252 million contract, 10-year contract. So, you know, when you look at Aaron Judge making roughly $1.5 million to $2 million, and he led major leagues in home runs last year, there's no equity in major league salary. It's based on your timing of your contract negotiation.
Yeah, and you can't complain about what guys make now compared to what they made back in the day. But I just know that as great as baseball has been over the years, and I know we talk about the exodus of the Negro League baseball and how I think with Richie integrated Major League Baseball, it wasn't just because they wanted to do something that was fair. They wanted to get access to the better African-American athletes, and also it helped expand the Negro League Baseball. And when you think about the excitement of baseball revenue-wise makes a lot of money. You have 162 games a year, and everybody knows most of those games are not really, you know, on the edge of your seat, Big C. A lot of times you don't even get that until we get into the playoffs. So when you think about Yasiel Puig, you just made a great point. $9 million now is like $90 million where it came from. But I also want to ask you about, you know, Matt Kemp, an outfielder. Matt Kemp, $21 million salary. When you think about what guys are making, NFL players are kind of minimum wage according to baseball players, Big C, for guys that don't even have championships. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Chauncey, you also got to equate it with the number of games that are being played.
Yeah.
It's like with the NBA. I mean, in baseball, you have 162 games.
Yeah.
The NBA, you have 82 games.
Yeah.
The NFL, you have 16 games.
Yeah.
A more rigorous and taxing sport football is.
Yeah.
But less opportunities to create revenue.
Yeah.
When you only have 8 home games during the regular season.
Yeah.
And you have to have sellouts every one of those to really cover salaries.
Yeah.
You think about some of these teams, once they're out of the playoff after week 5, you know, they have half-empty stadiums.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you look at the Raiders late in the year last year, even at the halfway point.
Yeah.
They were lucky to get 45,000 people in the Coliseum.
Yeah. Well, that's why
they were a playoff team the year before.
Yeah. Well,
you know, Jacksonville, even though they won their division, they didn't have sellouts.
No.
the Miami Dolphins, I can't remember the last time they had a sellout.
No, and they even made that stadium smaller. Yeah.
And so when you look at these things and you compare them against these other sports, the NBA are much smaller arenas.
Yeah.
But they play a copious amount of games in 82, which is one of the things that the players complain about.
Yeah.
We look at Major League Baseball. We're in March right now, okay?
Yeah.
March. The World Series is at Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of days in between to play those 61, those 81 home games.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's a lot of dates in it. And if you look at stadiums like with the Dodgers, the Yankees, the Houston Astros, you got teams that are playing in front of packed houses or almost packed houses every night.
Well,
and so that generates a lot of revenue.
Yeah.
And, everyone keeps saying that the seasons are too long. And is the broadcasters.
Yeah.
I don't hear the players complaining because the crux of that is that, okay, if we shorten the season, we shorten your contract by that percentage.
Yeah.
Of dollars.
Yeah.
Players are saying, I don't mind.
Yep. Yeah, I don't mind. They rich anyway, Big C. You brought up something about some of these marquee programs. I mean, everybody loves baseball, especially the first week of it and also the last week of it when we're in the playoffs. I want to go out to the American League East where we look at the New York Yankees. And the Yankees have always been a staple for what Major League Baseball is. And in the Big Apple, the biggest city of the United States, it is New York. And it's more New York than the New York Giants. It's definitely more New York than the New York Jets. When you look at the Yankees, and Stanton makes $25 million a year, which is not that much money compared to New York when you have guys in small markets like, Kansas City making $21 million for Alex Gordon. But look at Stanton, $25 million. You have Tanaka making $22 million. And Aroldis Chapman, $17 million. A good old boy from Vallejo, CC Sabathia, is only making $10 million. In New York, that's not a lot of. He's not even making $1 million a month. How's he going to live in Trump Tower if you don't make more than $1 million a month, Big C? Your thoughts on how he's going to make a living, Big C?
CC's been around for a while, and there were some questions whether they would even bring him back this year.
Yeah.
So, he's working on a contract, on a one-year contract.
Yeah.
Happy to be in the Major League.
Yeah.
Didn't want to leave New York because he's had so much success.
Yeah.
In his career there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we can always say that players are not making any money.
Yeah.
But I think anybody who listens to a sports program would trade places with any of these players.
I'll trade right now, Big C. I'll trade right now. Yeah, I agree.
And you talk about Stan today opening up in Toronto.
Yeah.
He hit 2 opening day home runs.
Oh, really?
So that trade has paid dividends already. They beat Toronto up at Skydome, up in that country that you be picturing their national anthem.
Oh, Canada!
And I think they were a little weary and couldn't find the ball. So, Stan took 2 of them out of the park.
That's funny, Big Z. I love what I love about baseball right now is it makes everyone think back to when they played maybe Little League Baseball. If you didn't play Little League Baseball, maybe you played it in high school. If you didn't play it in high school, maybe you just grabbed. I mean, when I grew up, sometimes we had a bat and we had a ball, but we didn't have bases. So we'd take everybody who had a hat, and the hat would be not only the pitcher mound, it'd be first, second, third, and home plate. Some of them good old boys, after we finished playing, their hat was all jacked up, Big C, but they sacrificed for the good of the team, Big C. That make any sense?
Well, baseball was one of those games as a kid that you could play outnumbered.
Yeah.
And you didn't have to have an equal squad. You just have to have somebody go up the bat, and then somebody else will come up the bat and change positions in the field.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was one of those sports that if you didn't have enough gloves, you would loan gloves.
Yeah.
Somebody had a bat. Baseball and basketball, for every youth in America 30, 40, 50 years ago, Charlton, was the iconic thing to do because you had equalism.
Yeah.
Where, in football it was based on size and speed.
Yeah.
In baseball, it was based on making contact.
Yeah.
You could be a little kid that was 4 feet tall and weighed 83 pounds and you could play.
Yeah.
You could be a kid that was 5'7" and 150 pounds.
Yep.
and you could play.
Yeah.
And so everybody had equal opportunity in baseball. It was a sport that did not discriminate based on athleticism and size. It was a game of having the ability to make contact with the ball.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, you think about that. We talked about New York and their win over Toronto 6-1. And I kind of apologize to my Canadian brethren because I wasn't able to sing "Whoa, Canada" because I am partial to the Yankees. I've always loved that organization. They are really the staple of baseball. But let's go across the border. I don't think Donald Trump built that wall yet, so I think we can still go to Canada, Big C. Or have you been stopped at customs when you tried to get out of the country going north, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, you know, I think every time Trudeau comes down here, he lets him know that, you know, the U.S. is in a deficit, so that the wall is going to be built that they're going to have to pay.
Yeah.
And I think geographically he might have looked and seen that the Canadian border is just a mile or two longer than the Mexican border.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so he said, well, you know, we're going to hold off on that one right now.
Yeah, well, we appreciate it for that. Josh Donaldson, third baseman, their highest paid player at $23 million. Russell Martin's making $20 million. And A.J. Happ is making $13 million. What I love about, and we talked about it before, we just had an exhibition game up in Montreal where the Washington Nationals came from. And that's still, Montreal's a gorgeous city. They have a great stadium. There's so many things that can be done in Canada to bridge that North American, you know, and American cities together. So many people follow hockey. I mean, hockey, you go to Winnipeg, to Vancouver. They have teams coming down and playing in the United States. Las Vegas has a team, Nashville. I would love to see baseball do that too, because Canadians, they support baseball. They support the Toronto Blue Jays. They support hockey, of course, and they support the CFL football. But it would be great to see another Canadian team, at least on the west coast, Big C, of Canada. I wouldn't want to see a team from the Bay Area, but I really appreciate what's happened with the baseball team up in Canada. Toronto's a gorgeous city. I do want to swing us out to the Washington Nationals. We're talking about teams going back to Canada. Well, here's one that uprooted and came across that line and decided to come to the United States. Matt Scherzer, $22 million. He's their leading salary earner. And then Bryce Harper, outfielder, $21 million. And $22 million and $21 million, their top two income earners. Harper's never gotten them to the promised land, even though he's considered one of the paragons of virtue when it comes to baseball, one of the prodigal sons of baseball. You know, can hit the ball very well. He's always playing hard. I know he had an injury a couple of years ago. But do you see Washington being able to get back to the promised land? They've never been there, but they've been so close. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, this is a team that is not as stable as it should be. You know, you think about Dusty Baker took him to the NLCS championship, and was fired.
Yeah, crazy.
You know, and it's hard to fathom that this is an organization that really understands what it takes to win.
Yeah.
You know, to get that far, and that's the first major league manager that gets fired.
Yep.
You know, what does it say about your organization? That you're not trusting the process.
Yeah.
It takes a while to build a winning tradition.
Yeah.
Everyone doesn't get there in that first year making it to the NLCS. This is an organization that's had a lot of injuries to their stars. You spoke about Harper.
Yeah.
Strasburg has been hurt.
Yep.
A manager cannot control the injuries at times when players have them.
Yeah.
They can't control hitting streaks.
No.
They make the moves that they can to try to keep you in a game.
Yeah.
But it still comes down to the players, regardless whether you're playing basketball, baseball, football, hockey, to execute.
Yeah.
But, you know, there's a trend in all professional sports that black coaches with winning records get fired.
Yep, I've seen that.
Or they're being called on to be fired.
Yeah.
We saw that with the Detroit Lions.
Yep.
Jim Caldwell, 9-7. Got to go.
Yeah.
Coaches with 3-13 records keep their jobs.
Yeah.
And so we saw that with Dusty Baker last year.
Yeah.
He makes it to the NLCS, one game shy of getting to the World Series. You got to go. You're not producing.
Yeah.
So I wonder why, you know, it's so hard for African American coach to get a job, baseball, basketball, football.
Yeah.
But it's so easy to fire them for having winning records.
Well, we've seen that happen time and time again. I want to look out here on the West Coast. I look at one of my favorite teams over the years since Willie Mays, did his thing back in the day with the overhead catch. The San Francisco Giants, part of the NL West. They had 3 World Series over the last decades. And Bruce Bochy's really done a good job managing that team, even though they finished last year at 81-81. And sometimes they have bad luck. I think of Madison Bumgarner, an ace pitcher for the Giants, making $12 million a year, already has an injury from spring training, and that's just what happens. It's just part of the game. You're going to have injuries. I know they have some great players, and Johnny Cueto, starting pitcher, $22 million. He's a top income earner for the Giants. Buster Posey, been very solid as a catcher for the Giants, also hitting the ball. Jeff Samaja, I remember him playing at Notre Dame, making $19 million a year. A football player in college and baseball, and now he's a major league star. But I think who can be their best player this year, has a chance to be the MVP for the Giants, is outfielder Andrew McCutchen. $14 million contract. Not only is he fast, he can catch the ball, he's a good hitter. I think they have everything it takes to at least challenge the Dodgers in the NL West. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, McCutchen came over in a trade from Pittsburgh, where he had been a perennial all-star the last 2 years in the league, though he's had some injuries that have slowed his playing.
Yeah.
But when you think about the Giants organization, it's been led by Buster Posey.
Yep.
And it's ironic to think that Buster Posey now is the elder statesman of the Giants. He's been around for 10 years.
Yeah.
But he's been a perennial all-star.
Yep.
He's consistently been in the MVP running.
Yeah.
As a catcher. But he controls the tempo of the game, Charlton.
Yeah.
He's the one that has to manage all the pitches throughout the season.
Yeah.
But he has a solid bat.
Yeah.
So, I think if Buster Posey can have that good year batting at least .320, the Giants can challenge the Dodgers in the West.
Yeah, and I think they will over time. It's just about staying healthy. Big C, we're going to swing up north, not quite far as, Canada, but we are going to go to the Windy City. If you've ever been to the Windy City, they have this deep dish pizza called Chicago-style pizza. I thought it was a hamburger that was dipped in tomato sauce, Big C, but it was actually pretty good if you could digest it. So I'm going to ask you, next time I'm in Chicago, if you can have some of your good old boys send up some moonshine so we can watch that thick, I don't know where they get that beef from up in Chicago. I guess with all that wind blowing in the Windy City, those cows have to be extra strong so the meat's a little tough. But the Chicago Cubs, the Big C Cubs, Big C, I look at them 97-65 last year. And it's great when Chicago wins anything. It's been a long time for the Bears. We know the Cubs did their things a couple of years ago in the Big C World Series. John Lester making $27 million. Jason Hayward, $26 million, starting pitcher and outfielder. And Darvish, I guess they gave Darvish $25 million because they didn't see him perform against Houston last year. Big C in the World Series. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, this is the team that's gone, as pitching has gone, Charlton, over the past couple of years.
Yeah.
They've done a tremendous job of competing.
Yeah.
You think about, they were the hapless Cubs forever.
Yeah.
Now they're an attention draw in Major League Baseball for winning.
Yeah.
The organization was brought up by a new family, and they've been performing for the last 3 years at a peak level.
Yeah.
They brought in a manager who knew how to adjust and move in new players into the organization, Charles.
Yeah.
And so we've seen that from the Cubs.
Yeah.
They've been productive. And I see them, once again, being back on the top of their division.
Yeah.
Because they don't really have any fall off. They have a solid pitching staff.
Yeah.
They have a solid infield. The outfield hasn't gone anywhere.
Yeah.
And they're healthy.
Yeah.
Last year, at the beginning of the season, they weren't healthy. Scherber was not in the lineup.
Yeah.
But when you look at him, Charlton, this offseason, he went out and remade himself physically. And so if the rest of the team has that same tenacity that he came in the training camp with, it wouldn't be a far stretch to see the Cubs back in the World Series.
Well, speaking of a team that also had a lot of hope last year in the AL Central, the Big C, Cleveland Indians, and I still remember one of my favorite movies was Charlie Sheen was in it. and them good old boys they were playing at Cleveland, and I'll never forget how the fans, the tribe, they come out and support their organization. And I look at what Cleveland's done, 97-65 last year. The playoff World Series game that they played against the Cubs it was down to the wire. It was nail biting, and I remember it ignited the city, because if you go to Cleveland, the Browns are still trying to rebuild, and then you have the Cleveland Cavaliers. They're the reason that people love sports in Cleveland. They're the only ones that have really been doing anything of late. But I look at what the Cleveland Indians have done. They have a chance to repeat. I mean, Minnesota is going to challenge them, so with Kansas City. Kansas City's been very strong over the years. But I look at Minnesota's payroll, and the Cleveland payroll, you look at Edwin Encarnacion's $18 million, and Jason Kapanis is $13 million. And I don't see where they have the highest payroll. How are they going to be as consistent as what their brethren are doing in Chicago to keep up with them in that central part of the country? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, this is a franchise that has a lot of young talent.
Yeah.
And you see what they've done back-to-back seasons, Charlton, is that you have to challenge them.
Yeah.
The manager has done a tremendous job since coming over from Boston.
Yeah.
And, he has this organization believing. He won a couple World Series here. He's been in one World Series in Cleveland.
Yeah.
But they're probably in the toughest division in the American League because they have the Minnesota Twins. This was a team that was lightning hot at the end of last season, Charlton. And so this is a team that I picked to win that division this year.
Oh, yeah.
For Cleveland to finish second.
Yeah. I tell you what, Big C, we'd be remiss if we talked baseball and didn't talk about your good old boys from Boston. Boston's good for a lot of things. And for a long time, they were like Chicago. They just couldn't win anything. And they were always looking up at the New York Yankees, even though New York's south of Boston. And I look at them today. They get beat by Tampa in the opening game, but there's still a reason, being at Fenway Park and walking through that park and seeing how their fans really love baseball in Boston. We think of Boston as a town, for the Patriots that have won, multiple Super Bowls, it seems, every year or every other year, the Patriots are in the Super Bowl. We know how strong the Boston Celtics have been in baseball over the years. And the Bruins have been great in the NHL. But there's something about Fenway that seems like it's more Boston than any other sports team. I know they dropped the game, the opener, at Tampa 6-4. But what is it about Boston that makes it such a great baseball town, even though people may think of it more football lately? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I think it comes down to the knowledge of the fans, Charlton.
Yeah.
You're talking about a long-established franchise in the city. We're looking at Fenway, one of the oldest stadiums in all of Major League Baseball.
Yeah.
But you're talking about fans who come to the game and have a passion for the game.
Yeah.
You're not talking about the fair weather scenario.
Yeah.
These guys come in, Charlton, and the players, it resonates to them.
Yeah.
Is that you can't fool the fans in Boston.
No.
And so the players know that when they're not playing well, they're going to hear it.
Yeah.
And they're going to hear it from knowledgeable sources. They're not just going to hear it from the sportscasters or the guys who are writing in the paper.
Yeah.
But they have lifetime fans that have been in that stadium a lot longer than any player's career that's ever played for that team.
Yeah.
Sitting close to the dugout.
Yeah.
Explaining to players what they're doing wrong and what they need to correct.
Yeah. I tell you what, Big C, it's a great place if you've ever seen any baseball stadium. I love the fact that Wrigley Field in Chicago and Fenway in Boston, they kept it as old, as historic, as original as possible. They haven't added some of the gadgetry that we see in a lot of stadiums around the country. David Price, $30 million starting pitcher. J.D. Martinez, outfield, $23 million. Hanley Ramirez, first baseman, $22 million. Love seeing baseball when Boston's doing well. And, my counterparts, as we swing out to the West Coast, Big C, I do want to say that sports is a billion-dollar industry. And boys and girls sports is a foundation to this billion-dollar industry. For every athletic and sporting event, you need athletic and event insurance. We work with Ben and Mark. They've been around half a century. They work with Big C Sports. Whether you're a pro team, a collegiate team, a high school team, or your mom and pop soccer leagues, when you reach out to them, let them know Big C sent you at 800-772-8624. That's 800-772-8624. When we think about the Oakland A's, the Oakland Athletics, there's something about the history going back to the 70s. They've had guys like the Catfish Hunter. I remember, Ricky Henderson might be the most well-known Oakland A's in the history of that franchise, even though Reggie Jackson, a lot of people understand how dominant he was as a player. And just give me your thoughts on, I know when you took the highest salary for the A's, Chris Davis outfield, he makes $10 million, Big C. Now, that's chump change in Major League Baseball, but that's the highest paid player. And we've heard about how they always want to cut salary and get players on the cheap. But this has been a great franchise over the years. It's a shame that we think about the best years of the A's being, 20, 30 years ago. Big C, your thoughts?
But this is also a franchise that has moved, Charlton.
Yeah.
At one point, they were the Philadelphia A's.
Yeah.
Then they were the Kansas City A's prior to becoming the Oakland A's.
Yeah.
And for some reason, they have not been able to sustain the fan base.
Yeah.
They've always gotten rid of their elite players. When you spoke about Reggie Jackson,
yeah,
Catfish Hunter,
yep,
these players left the organization, Charlton, after winning World Series.
Yeah.
Even Charlie Finley would not pay them. And even ownership and management over the past couple of decades.
Yeah.
Even when Billy Martin was managing the team, Charlton.
Yeah.
They had players. They were there 2 or 3 years, burned them out,
yep,
and got rid of them.
Yeah.
And we're still seeing that with the A's. If you got a player that's potential all-star coming up to free agency,
yeah,
he knows he might as well put his house on the market.
Yeah.
Because he's not going to be in Oakland.
Yeah.
And so when you talk about teams not producing in a market, we see that with the Raiders leaving this market. We see this with Golden State leaving this market.
Yeah.
For some reason, the organizations in the East Bay just don't see that they want to stay and keep the fan base.
Yeah.
They don't want to do anything to entice the fan base.
Yeah.
You get rid of the players that fans love. You spoke about Ricky Henderson.
Yeah.
He spent several key years of his career with the Yankees.
Yeah.
And the Toronto Blue Jays. Not just with the A's. He was gone.
Yeah.
He was an all-star. He had to go elsewhere to get paid. He eventually came back and retired in Oakland.
Yep.
But that's why fan bases don't stay. We talk about Boston. We talk about New York.
Yeah.
Los Angeles.
Yeah.
They pay their players.
Yeah.
Fans stay.
Yeah.
But when a player gets to be an all-star, Oakland has found a reason for the past 20 years to say, you have to move.
Hasta la vista, baby. I think they've been watching too much of that Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. He was out here in California, too, as governor. Hasta la vista. And it seems like the East Bay is willing to say hasta la vista to too many of their sports teams. So I'm going to swing it back down south to the Moonshine State, Big C, in the beautiful Peach State, the beautiful state of Georgia. I hear even the mountains in Georgia are smooth, Big C. And that moonshine, them good old boys that roll around in moonshine, I hear the catfish are bigger and the moonshine sweeter. But tell me about the Atlanta Braves. They had a stadium that was good enough to host the Olympics back in the day when Ali held the torch. And they're building a new one. They've already built a new one that they've moved over to. But I don't know if they have the same following in the new digs that they had in the older digs. And before that, they even played at Fulton County Stadium. You look at their payroll, and Freddie Freeman, first baseman, $21 million. And then Brandon McCarthy, he's a starting pitcher, $11 million. Is Atlanta doing the right thing and always not necessarily leaving the city, but they're going to the outskirts, and they're also leaving that fan base that had built up such appreciation for them when they played at their older stadium back in the day? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, talking, you think about the Olympic Stadium that they had that opened in 1996 for that Olympics.
Yeah.
And they opened up SunTrust Park last season.
Yeah.
Which is north of the city of Atlanta. So, I mean, they're looking at a different base, more economic, in that area.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the people who would build livelihoods around that stadium, the Olympic Stadium, Turner Field,
yeah,
who relied on the baseball season
Yeah.
and events that were being held there.
Yeah.
When we talk about communities losing, the financial impact,
Yeah.
that's what occurs. Even though you stay in the same city, but you move 40 miles away,
Yeah.
that's a huge financial impact on those people who can no longer be concessionaires
Yeah.
outside the venue.
Yeah.
Now, they won today in their season opener 8-5. So, they made some good moves in the offseason, and it looks like they may compete. This is a team that for years under Bobby Cox, they were always a favorite. They won so many National League titles and only one World Series.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was back in the 90s also, I believe 98 when they won that series. And matter of fact, this is one of the few Major League Baseball teams that had two professional football players on it.
Oh, really?
Brian Jordan and Deion Sanders.
Yeah.
Both played Major League Baseball and NFL football at the same time.
Yeah, that's true. And they've had a great franchise over the years. Love the tomahawk chop when they do the thing when they would always play against the Giants, and when they would come, the Giants would go back and play down south. The fans were always in it. They had their own mantra that makes baseball unique for you good old boys down south. I want to also swing to the mid part of the country, and that would be the St. Louis Cardinals, one of the prodigal teams of Major League Baseball. And you think about with the arch in St. Louis and the Mississippi, I think they have the McDonald's that floats down the river. Big C, you good old boys. I saw some moonshiners taking the Mississippi trying to get into a game. But I think about St. Louis, and a great baseball town. It's a great place for baseball if you like being bitten by bugs. Those big old bugs are about the size of of a walnut. Big C, the bugs are so big back in St. Louis. But Yadier Molina, $22 million. Adam Wainwright, $19 million. Just that organization, the town turns out for baseball in St. Louis. They built a gorgeous stadium downtown, and baseball's better when the Cardinals are winning. Your thoughts on St. Louis? They're always trying to challenge with them good old boys from Chicago. St. Louis was 85-77 last year. Your thoughts on them trying to unseat the mighty Cubs this year, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, they had a little bit of a down year last year, Charlton, due to injuries.
Yeah.
But that division has always been tight, and it was dominated by the Cardinals up until 3 years ago, and the Cubs caught fire. And
yeah.
All of a sudden changed the landscape. But the Cardinals, they're in the Midwest part of the country, Charlton, and have always been a baseball power.
Oh, yeah.
The players, enjoy playing with that organization. It's always been a top-flight organization, Charlton, and you spoke about they opened a new stadium just a couple of years ago. They got rid of Busch and got the new Busch Stadium there.
Yeah.
But the fans are always there. It just comes down to pitching with the Cardinals.
Yeah.
Can they keep their pitching staff healthy?
Yeah. Well, we're going to find out. They're going to be challenged this year. The heat and humidity makes it tough on players, especially as they play into the later innings. So a lot of the games are played at night. I want to swing you out to the West Coast. You ever been to Disneyland, Big C? Out here where they have Snoopy, and there's a big rat running around Disneyland. I had some moonshine before I went into the park one time. I thought it was a real rat, so I kind of scared me, Big C. But you ever been out to Disneyland, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, I guess you call that the house of the mouse.
They say, what do they say? There's something about when you wish upon a star, makes no difference who you are. Anything your heart desires will come to you. Now, when you look at the Angels, the LA Angels, and I remember at a time they were called the California Angels back in the day when Rod Carew played for them. Mike Trout, $34 million. Albert Pujols, who also came from St. Louis, $27 million. But I look at how their payroll is high, but they haven't gotten a lot out of that payroll. They were 87-75 last year. I think Trout could be one of the better players in the American League, but they still have to find a way to be consistent. But it seems like Houston has set the bar so high that even if they can compete in the AL West, they're not going to beat Houston, which finished 13 games above them in last year's race. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you think about Mike Trout, Charlton. I think he's the best player in Major League Baseball.
He's amazing.
Now, he was injured and he missed 40 games last year.
Yeah.
That's the difference in them having a winning record and not getting into the playoffs.
Yeah.
Because you can't replace a player like that in the lineup with the glove in the outfield or the bat at home plate.
Yeah.
Now, Albert Pujols last year crossed the 600 home run mark.
Yep.
He's been a perennial all-star, being in the major leagues, playing first base. Started his career with the Cardinals.
Yeah.
If Trout is healthy all year long, Charlton, they can challenge anybody.
Yeah.
Because he's the heart and soul of that organization. People feed off of him.
Yeah.
It's amazing that with certain franchises, when you have this star player, that you don't want to be the one not upholding your end.
Yeah.
When he's out there hustling every play.
Yeah.
And Mike Trout does that. Ever since he's been in the major leagues, Charlton, he's either been the MVP or in the top 3 of the voting every year. That's how great a player he is.
Yeah, he's solid. I really like his hustle. I like his game, Big C. But they're in tough because Houston's not going anywhere anytime soon. I do want to swing it out to the East Coast again, where the New York Mets play. They have that beautiful ballpark as well. And Cespedes makes $29 million a year. That's their highest paid player. But he's an outfielder. Adrian Gonzalez, a first baseman, $22 million. This is where the Mets may run into a little bit of trouble. I know in the NL East they're going to chase Washington. They finished 7 games back last year at 83 and 79. But I look at their pitcher think about what pitching it pays you out here in Los Angeles and also in Houston. When you look at the Mets, DeGrom makes $7 million a year. That's the guy they want to shut down all their opponents at bat. And then behind him you have Vargas at $7 million. They haven't put as much money into DeGrom as some of the other organizations have put into their starting pitchers, especially when you contrast them with the Yankees. Do you see them being able to compete with the Washington Nationals, Big C, with their starting pitchers? They have to feel a little bit disgruntled because they're not making much money. It's kind of chump change, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you speak about Cespedes, and you talked about the A's early. He's the product of leaving the A's once he became a free agent.
Yeah.
He got close to free agency. The A's traded him to New York.
Yeah.
He's making 27. The A's top players making 10.
Yeah.
You talk about DeGrom. You also spoke about Samardzija earlier, the former Notre Dame wide receiver who is now with the Giants.
The Giants, yeah.
He was with the Mets last year.
Yeah.
Free agency, they let him go. The Mets are not investing money into a pitching staff.
No.
And everybody knows that in baseball, that's your heart and soul.
Yeah.
If you don't have some hurlers on the mound, you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah.
And when you got mid-range starters, which is what the Mets have,
yeah,
you can only hope to have a season that you play at least 500 baseball.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's great when you have people that put money into their organizations. And for some of the pitching out there, sometimes we think players are paid way too much money. But I look forward to Major League Baseball as we start this beautiful 2018 season. A lot of people have a lot of hope, thinking that maybe they can be the ones that get to celebrate the way the Houston Astros did last year. Coming out to Los Angeles and beating up on the Dodgers. I didn't think that was right, that they treated the Dodgers fans that way, because it's been since 1988. And Tommy Lasorda was ready. You know how much pasta Tommy Lasorda ordered for that game, Big C, but he wasn't able to get that pasta eaten because the good old boys from Houston, they spoiled it for him. But I look forward to baseball this year. I do want to touch on something that I know that you love talking about, Big C. When I look at the Negro Leagues and how we know it's gone, and I know you love to pay homage to the Negro Leagues and what they meant and how it was just stripped apart. And I know a lot of times we don't hear about some of the great African-American players that were part of the Negro Leagues that would also be having, their opening day. And just a thought on what it means that we don't have that league anymore and what we're missing as a society, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I think how hard Major League Baseball worked to dismantle the Negro Leagues. And then over the last 20 years, how hard they have worked to eliminate the African-American player from the major leagues.
Yep.
Is that, you feel that it's more important to bring in the Latin player.
Yeah.
Because you've owned them for 4 to 5 years in a developmental camp.
Yeah.
And you bring them into the majors at a very cheap rate.
Yeah.
Even when we look on major league fields now and we see what we think are African-American players, Charlton, they're Cuban.
Yeah.
They're from South America. The Dominican, Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
Just because they look a complexion don't mean that they're African-American. Yes, they're from African descent.
Yeah.
But they don't speak English.
Yeah.
And so they've been replaced, African-American players, by these South American players.
Yeah.
And these foreign players.
Yep.
For years, you felt you needed that talent from America, but you also needed to destroy a league to increase your economics.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was the decline of the Negro Leagues when you look at it in its whole totality, Charlton. It wasn't about integration.
Yeah.
It was about devoiding them of revenue.
Yeah.
So if you take the young talent and they're not replenishing their league with the young talent because they're going to the major leagues,
Yeah.
the older players eventually can't play at that level any longer.
Yeah.
And now you're telling black fans, you can buy a ticket now to Major League Ballpark.
Yeah.
Well, 20 years ago, you couldn't.
Isn't that
Now
amazing?
we'll accept your money.
Yep, it's always about the money. I think that good old boy Jerry Maguire said, "Show me the money." Back in the day, I should have been in that movie, Big C. I could have played hurt on the in the end zone. When Cuba Gooding Jr. came down in the end zone and laid down on the ground, the grandstand a little bit. I guess they call that acting, and he was doing a good job. I love his acting ability. But I just want to say to all the people who love baseball, at some time, just Google some of the Negro League and see that great lineage of a league that once at one time was a mainstay of entertainment for African American communities all over this great country. And it's gone now. We know the integrations is good in many aspects, but sometimes when you don't have ownership, that's what's bad. And a lot of times people forget that it even existed, and I hope that they keep paying homage to it. Big C, as we close out, I do want to just say, we always love paying homage to our high school athletes all over this country. I want to just congratulate the top 10 high school baseball teams, ranking-wise, according to Big C Sports and Mini Media. Number 1, Lake Travis of Austin, Texas, 14-0. Number 2, Calvary Christian Academy out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, 13-1. Number 3, Calvary Christian out of Clearwater, Florida. They are 15-0. Number 4, Notre Dame of Sherman Oaks, California, out here on the West Coast. They are 8-0. Number 5, IMG Academy out of Bradenton, Florida. They are 14-0. That IMG Academy, man, they have a great program for everything, and oftentimes their kids can come around you think they're in college sometimes to get kids that come from so far away to play Big C, but congratulations on playing great baseball. Number 6, Sam Houston out of Lake Charles, Louisiana, 23-1. Number 7, John Curtis Christian of River Ridge, Louisiana, 16-2. Number 8, Huntington Beach, California, 13-2. Them good old boys from the West Coast. Number 9, Mill Creek out of Houston, Georgia, 15-3. And number 10, Valley Christian of San Jose, California. They are 10-1-1. Congratulations, your high school players, your boys baseball players. We wish you nothing but the best this year as you try to get onto the major league level sometime in your near future. Big C, as we close out, I know the NBA is always a hot topic. And Minnesota last night, I think it was, 56 points scored by, was it Towns that hit 56 points? I thought I was watching Michael Jordan back in the day. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Karl Anthony Towns is one of the greater young talents in the NBA. He was number 1 pick in the league just a couple of seasons ago.
Yeah.
And he plays with Andrew Wiggins, who was the number 1 pick prior to that.
Yeah.
So Thibodeau is developing something there in Minnesota that in a couple of years will challenge in the NBA. You got to be more consistent. It's nice to have a 56-point game, Charlton, but you want to see a big man scoring in the 20s every night.
Yeah, you want to see.
And, to have a dominant game like that speaks bows that, he's developing and he's almost ready to dominate at that level now in the NBA.
Yeah, I tell you what, he looked good, but you got to do it consistently. I'd rather have a guy consistently giving me 25 or 30 as opposed to breaking out like that. But you got to credit him. He was dropping them in the bucket. They were going in. I do want to pay homage to King James. King James just tied the great Michael Jordan last night, as far as double-doubles in his career. And he has another, probably a good 5 years of dominant basketball for LeBron James, being that he stays healthy. But this is a guy, when you look at him, and he thinks that he should be the MVP, and maybe he should if you don't just look at the basketball that Harden's putting up right now. But what are your thoughts on LeBron? He's like that big ship, that ocean liner, that aircraft carrier. It just sails through the oceans, Big C, and it chops through all the waves. It chops through all the naysayers. It's just steady, like a big ship in the ocean. That's what LeBron James has been. Even if he's not MVP, I still think that he's the best player in the universe. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I think that LeBron James is suffering some of that Tiger Woods syndrome.
Yeah.
Is that you've been the greatest for so long, is that we're looking for somebody else to give it to every year other than you.
Yeah.
You know, they're voting for him, they love him, but it's like, God, there's got to be another guy out here that can compete with you.
Well, he hasn't won in, 3 years?
Someone.
He hasn't done it in 3 years. It's been Curry and then Durant the last 2 years, Big C.
Well,
And also
if you look at him
Westbrook.
statistically
Yeah.
this year,
Yeah.
his numbers are equal to Harden's and better in everything except for scoring.
Yeah.
He's better rebounds, better assists. He's played more games this season than Harden.
Yeah.
And so when you look at that, is he the MVP? You know, where would Houston be without Harden? They would be a good competitive team.
Yep.
Where would Cleveland be without James? We saw that when he went to Miami.
Yep.
Okay?
Yeah.
So who is the true MVP? And it's good to see that the league and the players will pass around the torch to other players each year, naming them the MVP.
Yeah.
But when you look at what a player means to a team, to a league, you know, you can't say that he's not the MVP.
Yeah.
Even though you give it to other players,
Yeah.
the argument about his consistency, Jonathan, is second to none.
Yeah.
Harden has had 2 back-to-back solid seasons in Houston.
Yeah.
LeBron has had solid seasons ever since his 3rd year in the NBA.
Yeah.
And so for 12 straight years, he could have been named the MVP. But you think about it, for 12 years, he's been in the top 3 voting in the MVP chase 12 consecutive years.
Yeah, and you can't argue with that. And sometimes I hear the argument that we got to give it to somebody else because he's never won it before. Well, isn't that the same argument? There's a TV commercial where the dad's going to a game with his son and they lost, and they gave his son a congratulation or participation trophy, and the dad took the label off the participation trophy. Now, I know Harden's off the hook. He's a great player, but I still ask anybody. Maybe we should have an Eastern Conference and Western Conference MVP, Big C. Maybe that's a way to figure it out. But, no matter who gets it, it's great seeing that so many players are up for the challenge. I do want to finish out the Portland Trailblazers last night to lose that game on the road at Memphis, of all teams, shows me that maybe they're not ready. And it wasn't Damian Lillard that missed a shot. It was McCollum that couldn't tie the game. But again, you got to credit teams that win. But I think more and more, when Golden State comes back healthy, we're still going to see Golden State and Houston in the finals, in the Western Conference Finals. We don't know yet about the Eastern Conference because it's still up for grabs, so we'll have to see. Basically, tonight's games in the NBA: Detroit against Washington, Miami's at home against Chicago, San Antonio's home against OKC, Indiana's on the road at Sacramento, and Golden State's at home against Milwaukee. Your thoughts before we close out. How important is it for the San Antonio Spurs and the OKC Thunder for either team to get that win tonight, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Jonathan, we're looking for that last playoff spot right now when teams are playing for.
Yeah.
And that means you're going to have to play the Houston Rockets in the first round.
Yeah.
No team really wants to do that because they've just dominated throughout.
Yeah.
And when you get to this point of the year and you're tired, that's not the team that you want to see night after night.
Yeah.
So it's very important not to finish in that 8th spot.
Yeah.
But even finishing in 2nd, who do you face?
Yeah.
The Golden State Warriors.
Yeah, that's true.
If you're in the 7th spot.
Yeah. Yep. Well, we look forward to it. It's always going to be great. NBA action is fantastic. Congratulations that baseball is back to all you good boys that like to sit in the sun for 3 and 4 hours. And Big C, back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Bundini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man. He would always tell Ali, with all you've got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young men, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, as I stated, I'm excited about this opening day of Major League Baseball. And great fanfare throughout the league. Full Major League parks, Charlton.
Yep.
The teams that were in the World Series last year having dominant performance. We saw that Houston won the day earlier.
Yeah.
The Dodgers are playing the Giants tonight. But I'm so excited that, like I said, I got 81 home games that I got an excuse straight there.
Well, don't make your moonshine distributors upset, Big C. You know how some of those good old boys down south, they keep a grudge on you. But every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide, follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and some good old boys down south. As we always tell you, there's never, ever any excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.